Welcome back. This is Dr. Hadley. This is my series on Microsoft 365 Excel, the online version. We are in Unit 2. Unit 2 is basically functions. So last time we did very common functions. This time we're going to do the rest of the, well, not rest, but the bulk of the other array functions. So again, an array is a set of numbers. So an array function would be like sum or average, because you're doing that calculation on multiple numbers. So let's get a list of numbers going so that we have something to work with. 12, 55, 6, 7, 10, 0, -2, I don't know, 6, 54, and 33. So again, we can find all of these formulas under here, under formula, but I'm just going to kind of, because they're kind of hidden, I mean, they're alphabetical, so we're just going to kind of go through all the key ones. So the first one is count. Okay, so if we go to equals count, what this is going to do is it's going to count how many cells have numbers. Okay? Obviously 10. However, let's say I delete a number. Now it's only 9. Let's say I have a different function that doesn't quite work, like equals this 7 divided by this 0. So I get divided by 0, it still doesn't increase, because even though there's something in this cell, because it's not an actual number, it doesn't count. If you want to count all of the cells that have something, that would be count A, as in count all. So equals count A, and that gives us our 10. And that's for divide by zeros, not a number, reference, any kind of error, it will still count those. The only time it won't count is if it is blank. Because if I make this blank, it still goes back to 9. So that's the only case that won't be counted. Okay. Well, let's bring that back to 1 for example. All right, the next one we're going to do is called product. So product, okay. Product is basically a sum, but with multiplication instead of addition. This isn't common, well, probably not common. I'm not a finance person, but it's probably not common in business, but it does come up in engineering calculations. So product equals product, and then our array, and we should get 0 because there's a 0 in there. If I change this to 1 or 5, I'm going to get a big negative number because I have that, C. But we're going to change that back to 0 and keep it as is. Okay. Next is a very useful one called large. So we talked about max and minimum. Large is basically like that. So large. So it says we want an array, and then comma K. So K is, it says it's the position, but basically it's saying, is it the second largest? Is it the third largest? Is it the fourth largest? This is very, very useful. When I was teaching, I would use, I would curve things, so to speak, based on the third highest value. So this is very valuable in that context. So if I click 3, it's going to give me the third highest value, which in this case should be 33. Yes, it is. Okay, and small works exactly the same way, but for the smallest. So if I do this comma 3, I should get 1. Next we have standard deviation. So we have 2 types. We have standard deviation.s, standard deviation.p. The difference is sample or population. So if you understand statistics, you'll understand that standard deviation.s, and then of course our numbers, and it'll give us our standard deviation. And the math is just slightly different if it's population data. So just for example, standard deviation.population. So not very different, but slightly different. Another one is the variance. The variance is basically the standard deviation squared. It's the same kind of thing. So var.s var.p equals variance .s shows basically that number squared. So, if we go equals this guy squared, I get the same thing. So that's how variance works. The next one is mode. Mode is, like mean and median, mean being the average, median being the middle, and mode being the most common. So mode. When we type it in, you'll see that we have three choices. We have mode, mode.mult, mode.sngl. So mode is a legacy function. It's what it used to be, but it was strictly the single version. So mode and mode.sngl are technically the exact same thing. It's the mode.mult that comes into play that's important. So, but if we do mode.sngl on this list, we should get 6, okay? Because it's the most common. If there's multiples, it's going to do the one that appears first. Not the lowest, but the one that appears first. So if we make this a 0 up here, okay, well 0, there's 2 zeros and 2 6s, so there's multiple modes, but 0 appears first in the list, so it gets prioritized. But if I made this one a 6, it's going to change it back to 6 because now there's 3 6s. Yeah. However, let's undo that, Control Z. If I do mode.mult, so equals mode.mult, it's going to actually spit out an array. So you can see this is an array because there is a blue border around all of the applicable cells. So this is an array of modes. So this list has multiple modes. It has multiple repeating numbers. The last one, or sort of last one, they're very similar, is quartile and percentile. So let's go to quartile first. So quartile equals quartile. You can see that this one also has multiple options because, again, those are legacy versions. Okay, we have .exc, which is exclusive, and .inc, inclusive, in terms of how it specifically calculates the quartile. By default, it is inclusive, but let's just do inc to start with. We have our array, comma, and we have to tell it which quartile because it doesn't know. There's no function for the first quartile. I just do quartile and then I say 1 here to indicate that it is the first quartile. But if I chose 2, that becomes the median. If I choose 3, that's the third quartile. But I can also even have the max at 4. Okay, but let's just have it at 3 as the third quartile. And there we go, 26.5. And you can see how the difference if it's included versus excluded, okay, definitely changes drastically because it's such a small data set. So it definitely is important with a small data set. With a large data set, it probably won't have as much of an impact. But the next one is percentile, which is very similar. But I still have the array first, but instead of choosing the quartile or whatever, I'm giving it a specific percentage. Like, so the top 30% or the top 60th percent or whatever, instead of specifically 0.75 or 0.25 for the different quartiles. So if I want, 0.6, that's going to give me, the threshold for anything that's in the top 60th percentile. And in this case, that is 6.4. So anything above 6.4 is in that top 40%, as it were. And that is all I have today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you have learned something. Keep watching, subscribe, like this video. Have a good day.